I don't remember what it felt like to be a child. I remember hunger. I remember the sharpness of bone against my skin where fat should have been. I remember the sound of my stepmother's boots across the floorboards, like the tick of a pistol hammer being cocked. And I remember that cracked tin cup, which changed everything. Clara Wren always had a way of making small things feel like crimes. A missed button, a thread out of place, a cough at the wrong moment. But that night, the cup had been sitting crooked on the counter, hairline split. I hadn't touched it. Lord knows I was too afraid to. But Clara's eyes fixed on me, wide as silver dollars and twice as cold. "You ungrateful little rodent," she hissed, before anyone could blink. There were guests in the parlor, folks from the church who'd come to hear her sing hymns and sip her sweet tea, but that didn't stop her, not when it came to me. She yanked my arm so hard I thought the socket'd give. I hit the kitchen floor on both knees, cracked my chin on the counter's edge. She didn't care. "You know how much that cup meant to my mother," she said, voice low but hot, "and you break it like it's nothing?" "I didn't touch it," I said, whispered. "Stupid, I should have said nothing." Her hand came down on me like a whip, open palm across the cheek. I tasted blood and saw the shoes of the guests still standing awkwardly by the parlor door, pretending they hadn't seen. The kind of pretending church people get real good at. Clara made a show of sighing. No supper for her tonight. Too lazy to work, too careless to respect what's mine. I turned away so they wouldn't see the tears welling, but I could hear the rustle of their skirts, the clank of teacups being set down, and the judgment in their silence. Later, I sat on the back steps pressing a cold cloth to my face. The sky was ink black, no moon, just the creak of the windmill and the sound of the chickens settling. Then came the words that lit the fuse. Clara stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You'll never be anything but a burden, June. If I had any sense, I'd send you to the workhouse where you belong." I said nothing, didn't dare, but something in me, something quiet and buried, began to wake. She turned and spat, "Be gone from my sight." So I went. I didn't pack, didn't take a coat, just stepped off the porch barefoot, walked past the barn and kept walking, into the cold, into the dark, into whatever was waiting beyond that fence line. Each step forward felt like a sin, each mile a prayer whispered through chattering teeth. I didn't know where I was headed. I only knew I wasn't going back. I'd rather freeze in a ditch than take another beating with God watching and no one lifting a hand. I crossed the shallow creek by the old cottonwoods, waded through waist-high grass and thorns that tore at my legs. My body was trembling from cold, but something in my chest burned hot. That house, her house, would not be the place I died. And somehow, somewhere in that blind stumbling, I found the faintest flicker of something close to hope. I don't know what pulled me toward the light. Could have been dumb luck, could have been providence. But just when my legs were about to quit on me, I saw a flicker through the trees, soft, yellow, steady, a lantern maybe, or the kind of warm window glow that stories say means safety. My breath was coming in sharp gulps. My feet were cut up bad. I had no business walking another inch. But that light was the first thing that didn't feel cruel in a long, long time. The homestead sat nestled behind a split-rail fence, modest but clean. A porch with 2 rocking chairs, a rope swing hanging off a cottonwood branch, chickens roosting in the barn, and the smell of something warm in the air, stew maybe, or biscuits. My knees buckled just smelling it.
I didn't make it to the door. I dropped right there in the dirt near the porch steps, half conscious, my dress caked in blood and mud. I must have made a noise, because the door creaked open and a tall figure stepped out, rifle in hand, cautious but calm. The kind of man who'd seen things but didn't flinch at shadows. "Hey now," his voice was deep, steady. "You all right, miss?" I opened my mouth to speak, but all I managed was a cough. He lowered the rifle and came down the steps. "Easy, let's get you inside." Next thing I remember, I was sitting at a wooden table, wrapped in a rough wool blanket, hands trembling as I held a bowl of stew so hot the steam fogged my eyes. Across from me sat the man. "Rhett Mallory," he said, "widower, father of 3, just trying to raise 'em right out here on the edge of nowhere." He didn't ask many questions at first, just watched me like a man might watch a wild animal, unsure if it'll bolt or bite. He said, "I ain't gonna hurt you," after I'd scraped the last of the stew from the bowl with my fingers. "You want to tell me your name?" I hesitated. "June," I whispered, staring down at the empty bowl. "You got folks looking for you?" "Not the kind that'd be missed. Not the kind that would want me found." He nodded like he understood more than I'd said. Then he motioned to a small cot near the fire. "You can sleep there tonight. We'll figure the rest out tomorrow." I just sat there for a moment, bowl clutched to my chest like it might disappear. No one had offered me anything without strings since I was a child too young to understand cruelty. It broke something in me, or maybe it unbroke it. I put my head down at the table and wept. Loud, heaving sobs I couldn't stop if I tried. Years of silence crashing out all at once. Rhett didn't interrupt, didn't shush me or ask questions or offer empty words. He just stoked the fire and let me be. That night, wrapped in a blanket that smelled of cedar smoke, I dreamed of nothing. For the first time in years, my sleep held no fists, no threats, no shame. In the morning, his youngest, a quiet girl with freckles like cinnamon dust, handed me a cup of coffee in both hands like an offering. "You can stay," she said. "Pa says you can stay." It was just a few words, but I felt them settle into me like roots into dry soil. I didn't trust it yet. I didn't trust him or the kindness, but I wanted to. God help me, I wanted to. I woke to the sound of a rooster and the scent of fresh bread. Not biscuits, bread. Warm, thick slices with melted butter. The kind of smell that makes you believe, if only for a second, that maybe life isn't always cruel. Rhett didn't waste time on formalities. That morning he handed me a pair of his late wife's boots and pointed out toward the barn. "Chores are done by breakfast. You're welcome to eat with us if you're willing to help." No threat in his voice, no sneer, just quiet invitation. I nodded. I'd never mucked a stall before, not properly, but the work was honest, and for once no one was watching for me to fail. Rhett showed me how to pitch straw, how to spread feed, how to haul water without spilling half of it on myself. His eldest, Benjamin, barely said a word, but offered me his gloves without being asked. I stayed busy that whole day. My muscles screamed, my fingers blistered, but I didn't stop. Something about sweating without fear, it felt like redemption. Every hour I worked, I felt less like a ghost and more like a girl again. My supper, I'd earned my seat at the table. Rhett's daughter, Ida, the quiet, freckled one, smiled at me as she passed the cornbread, like she already saw me as one of them, like I belonged. It should have scared me. It did, in a way.
but it also lit something I didn't know I had. A hunger that wasn't about food this time. A hunger for place, for people. "You plan to stay on?" Rhett asked after the meal, sipping coffee by the fire. I don't know yet." "Well," he said, looking at the flames, "you've got a bed here if you want it. My kids like you. That counts." That night I stood out under the stars, arms wrapped around myself, wondering when the blow would come, when he'd reveal what he really wanted. Because men don't give girls things for free. At least that's what Clara always said. But it didn't come. Not the next day, not the day after. Instead, I helped Rhett build a fence for a new paddock. I learned to mend a saddle and bandage a calf's foot. Every evening brought me more into their rhythm, more into their lives. And every evening, Clara's voice in my head got a little quieter. Until the letter came. Rhett found it folded into thirds, dropped off by a passing merchant. The envelope was stiff, proper, addressed in a hand I hadn't seen in months. My blood ran cold when I saw the name. Clara Wren. Rhett read it silently, then passed it to me. "She's looking for you." Inside, her words oozed with poison dressed in lace, said I'd gone astray, that there was still a place for me in her home, that she forgave me though I hardly deserved it, that her heart ached with worry. Lies, every word. But lies are loud, and the truth inside me still felt small. "I won't go back," I said, voice shaken. "I'd rather die out here." "You won't die," Rhett said, "not while I got say in it." But Clara wouldn't let go easy, that much I knew. She lost control, and that made her dangerous. "She'll come," I whispered, folding the letter into my fist. Rhett nodded. "Then we'll be ready." The way he said "we," like I was already part of the family, it rattled something loose inside me. Not fear this time, not shame. Hope. The morning air was still wet with dew, and we were just coming back from Pastor Thorne's little clapboard church when I saw the dust trail rising on the road. A two-horse rig, riding hard. Rhett's jaw tightened. He didn't say a word, just handed the reins to Ben and stepped down off the wagon slow, calm, like a man unbothered by the thunder he felt coming. Clara Wren descended from the carriage like she was stepping into court, dressed all in black, veil over her eyes, gloves buttoned up to the elbows. Like a widow in mourning, though no one had died. Not yet. Behind her stood a man I didn't recognize, badge on his chest, silver catching the sun. "Deputy Lawton," he said, tipping his hat. "We're here for the girl." Rhett didn't move. "She's not a prisoner. You got papers?" The deputy produced a folded document, stamped with the county seal. It named Clara Wren as guardian to one June Maribel Lark and demanded my return under grounds of unlawful harboring. My heart thudded in my chest like a trapped bird. I looked at Rhett, then at Clara. Her smile was thin as wire. "Come, girl, you've had your little adventure." I stepped forward, almost against my will, knees weak, but Rhett put a hand on my shoulder. Not to hold me back, just to remind me he was there. "She don't want to go," he said, quiet. "She doesn't know what she wants. She's a child. I'm 16, old enough to decide for myself." She took a step toward me, voice sugar-coated but teeth bared underneath. "I gave you a roof, I gave you food, and you repay me by running off like some stray dog? I gave you bruises, I gave you fear." Gasps from behind me. I turned. The whole congregation had followed us from church. Pastor Thorne, Mrs. Ellery, the Cooper family, all of them standing in a line behind the fence, listening. Clara realized she wasn't alone anymore.
"You're confused," she said, voice rising. "I disciplined you because I loved you." "No, ma'am," I said. "You hurt me because you could, and I let you because I didn't think I deserved better." Rhett stepped forward, holding out the letter she'd sent. "This don't match what you're saying now. You threatened her in this, and I got it in your handwriting." The deputy read it over, frowned. Clara's mask cracked for just a second, her mouth twisted. "She's lying." "I'm not," I said. My hands were shaking, but I didn't care. I remember every slap, every night without supper, every bruise you made me cover with long sleeves at church. Pastor Thorne spoke up then. "She never said a word about it before. That tells me she's not saying this for show. She's saying it because she finally feels safe." Clara looked around, realizing the crowd wasn't with her anymore. Even the deputy looked uncomfortable now. "Far as I can tell," he muttered, handing the paper back to Rhett, "this is a matter for the courts, not for me. The girl's not a fugitive. She stays." "You'll regret this," she hissed. "Ma'am," Rhett said, calm as still water, "you're on my land. I suggest you get off it." Clara stared at me one last time. Her eyes weren't angry anymore. They were empty, like she couldn't believe her weapon didn't work anymore. Then she turned, climbed back into her carriage, and rode off in a cloud of dust. I collapsed into Rhett's arms the moment they were gone. I hadn't cried like that since the first night. He held me like a father might, just strong and quiet. That day, I didn't just survive Clara Wren. I buried her power over me, and I took my first breath as someone who finally belongs somewhere.
We thought we were done with her. Foolish hope, the kind that blooms after a single rainstorm and gets burned off by morning sun. 2 weeks passed, maybe 3. I slept easy. The children smiled more. Red even laughed, once, real low and rough, like the sound had surprised him on its way out. I started planting beans out back, started thinking maybe I'd stay come winter. Then the men came. 3 of them rode up just before dawn. Everett Kane at the front, tall and smug, with a face like stretched leather and a U.S. Marshal badge that looked too shiny to be real. Said he was acting on behalf of Judge Larkin back in Hollow Bend. Said he had orders to reclaim a minor in unlawful custody. I was standing in the yard, hoe in hand. Rhett stepped between me and Kane like a wall made of bone and grit. "You already dealt with this," he said. "Girl stays. Deputy Lawton made that clear." Kane grinned. "Lawton's a county boy. This here's federal." He produced a paper that looked official, stamped with a crooked seal, but it wasn't signed. Rhett read it, slow. Then he looked up and said, "This ain't legal. That's above your pay grade, rancher." He motioned and the 2 men behind him started to dismount. "You come in it closer to her," Rhett said, voice cold, "and you'll leave with less than you came with." "Threats?" Kane sneered. "Promise." One of the riders reached for me, thinking I was scared. He was half right, but fear doesn't always freeze you. Sometimes it lights a fuse. I swung that hoe like it was a saber, caught the man square across the ribs. He went down howling. The second reached for his revolver, but Rhett was quicker, shot the pistol right out of the man's hand. The noise brought the children running, Pastor Thorne not far behind. Kane backed his horse up, sneering. "You think this is over? The judge wants her, and the judge gets what he wants." "She's not a thing to be passed around," Rhett said. "You order, you go through the courts. You lie again, and next time I won't just shoot the gun." Kane spat in the dirt. "This land ain't yours to make law on." "No,
"But it's ours to witness," said Pastor Thorne, stepping up. "I saw that paper. I heard your threat, and I'll testify." Kane glared at him, then at me. "You really think this place is going to protect you forever, girl? You're just a stray mutt some fool took in." He didn't wait for my answer, just turned his horse and rode off, dragging his man behind him, one clutching his side, the other nursing a mangled hand. After the dust cleared, I sat on the porch steps, heart pounding like a drum. "I should run," I said. "Go further. Disappear." "No," Rhett said. "You've done enough running. They want to play law, we'll fight 'em with law." I looked at him, at Pastor Thorne, at the kids inside who watched me like I was something more than broken. "They're powerful," I whispered. "So are you. You just ain't been told it enough." That night, Rhett lit every lantern on the property and left 'em burning till dawn. A message. We're not hiding. Not anymore.
The homestead didn't sleep much after that. Every hoofbeat on the ridge made me flinch. Every knock at the door twisted my gut. But Rhett never once asked me to leave. Not even when neighbors came around whispering that we were drawing heat from the wrong kind of men. The Judge Larkin didn't just sit on a bench. He owned land, wagons, half the mill contracts in 2 counties. His reach was long, and his mercy short. Still, Rhett kept fixing the barn roof, still had me planting onions and turnips and showing Ida how to saddle her own horse, like we were preparing for life, not war. But the war came anyway. It was Marshall Bain this time, not Kane. This one looked legitimate. Gray coat, iron jaw, paperwork that smelled like ink and arrogance. He showed up mid-morning, escorted by 2 riders and one of the Hollow Bend circuit clerks. Pulled up while Rhett and I were fixing the corral gate. Dust still clinging to his boots, he held out the letter with one gloved hand like it was scripture. "In accordance with Larkin's order, Miss June Maribel Lark is to be present at court within 10 days, he said. "Non-compliance will result in her being taken into custody." "Taken where?" I asked. My voice didn't shake. "Back under Clara Wren's care, until further proceedings." I looked down at the nails in my hand, then up at Rhett. She'll kill me," I said. "Maybe not quick, but she'll do it the slow way, the kind that don't leave marks." Marshal Bain said nothing. Rhett didn't argue with the marshal, just told him we'd comply, then watched as they rode off. His eyes didn't move from the horizon until the dust settled. That night, I packed what little I owned into a flour sack, sat on the edge of the bed, ready to run again. But Rhett walked in, holding a thick leather-bound ledger. His wife's, he said, used to keep records for the homestead. Inside were pages of livestock counts, seed orders, tax receipts, and near the back, a place for family names. He handed me a pen. "You sign here," he said. "You ain't just staying here. You're part of us." That ledger's been enough for taxmen and preachers alike. "I'm not blood," he said. "Blood's just water with memory. This is choice. This is claim." My hand shook as I wrote it. June Maribel Mallory. Pastor Thorne came by the next morning to notarize it. Said he'd be there in court too, alongside Rhett, to stand witness. "You sure this is what you want, child?" he asked me. "No," I said, "but I'm sure it's what I need." For the first time in my life, I wasn't being dragged somewhere. I was walking in, name in hand, voice sharpened by truth. I knew Clara would lie, Knew Judge Larkin would twist every word to keep power where it always lived, with the ones who'd done the hurtin'. But I wasn't the girl who trembled on a back porch anymore. I was June Maribel Mallory, and I had a name on paper to prove it.
The courthouse at Hollow Bend sat like a squat stone god, carved out of gray limestone and flanked by columns too proud for the kind of justice served inside. The benches were full that day. Word travels fast when scandal and power collide. Church folk, ranchers, gossips, even Clara's seamstress sitting front row in a hat too fine for a Monday. Clara was there already, dressed in her mourning black, handkerchief in hand like sorrow was her profession. And beside her, calm and coiled, sat Judge Larkin, eyes like river stones and just as cold. No one dared speak while he sat down, adjusted his collar, and said, "Let's begin." They made me sit like I was a criminal. Clara took the stand first. She wept, said she'd raised me since I was 6, said I'd gotten wild after puberty, disrespectful, erratic, claimed I had episodes and threatened her, claimed Rhett had taken advantage of my naive nature. She even used the word corrupted. Every lie she told painted her cruel hands as mercy. Larkin let her talk, nodded, took notes like he was listening to gospel. Then Rhett stood up, hands folded. He didn't shout, didn't plead, just said, "I never laid a finger on her, except to help her stand." He handed over the letter Clara wrote, the one where she'd threatened me. The judge skimmed it, unmoved. He muttered, "This proves very little." Pastor Thorne was next. He testified to my bruises, said no girl with clean sheets and full bellies runs out barefoot into the night unless she's running from something. Larkin grunted. Finally, it was my turn. I stood, knees locked, breath shallow. The courtroom felt like a pit. Clara watched me like a spider in a hymn book, smug, hidden, dangerous. I took the stand. The clerks wore me in. My voice barely worked. I was hungry, always hungry. I stole scraps from the chickens because Clara would lock the pantry and tell me I was too ungrateful for supper. Larkin raised a brow. "You admit to stealing?" "I admit to surviving." Clara scoffed. "She's a manipulator, Your Honor." I turned toward her. "You beat me for dropping a cup. You let your lovers watch while I scrubbed floors. You made me bleed and called it discipline." The room went silent. I thought I deserved it until someone gave me a blanket and a bed and didn't ask for anything in return. Then I realized what love's supposed to feel like. Larkin drummed his fingers. "Miss Lark, are you currently residing at the Mallory Ranch?" "I am." "Are you legally adopted?" "No, but I signed the ledger. I carry the name. That home, those people, that's my family now." He exhaled, long, frustrated. "This court recognizes no such ledger." Rhett stood. "Then recognize me," he said, "as a man who fed her, clothed her, protected her from harm. If that ain't what a guardian is, then your law's got no soul." Larkin looked at him for a long while, then at me. "You want to stay?" "Yes, sir." "You'll be subject to inspections, schooling, work expectations." "I already work. I work hard, but I won't go back. I won't be someone's punching bag to make them feel powerful." Another pause. Then almost reluctantly, he said, "So ordered." Gasps, a rustle of movement. Clara stood, furious. "This is an outrage." "You're welcome to appeal," Larkin muttered, "but for now, the girl stays where she is." I didn't cry, not then. I just exhaled. It felt like my lungs had been clenched for years. Clara stormed out,
silk skirts hissing like snakes. Rhett put a hand on my shoulder as I stepped down. Didn't say a word. He didn't need to. We walked out of that courthouse into sunlight so bright it felt like redemption. And for the first time since I was 6 years old, I was free.
We got home just before dusk, and everything looked different, though nothing had changed. The porch still leaned a little to the left. The check-ins still made their clumsy parade toward the coop, but the air tasted sharper, lighter, like the land itself had exhaled with me. That night, Rhett made stew and let Ida stir it while he read from an old dime novel by the fire. Ben whittled in the corner, and even little Ruth, who'd barely spoken since I arrived, curled up beside me with her head on my shoulder. Home. Not just a place, a choice, a fight I'd won. The next morning, Pastor Thorne came riding up with a satchel and a letter. It was addressed to me. "You'd best sit down for this," he said, smiling. It was from a woman named Annabelle Rowe, publisher of the Sage Hollow Sentinel. Said she'd heard about the courtroom testimony, that a teacher from the gallery had written in about my story. Said women across the county were talking about it, about me. She wanted to print an editorial under my name. Said I had a voice that needed to be heard. My hands trembled holding the letter. I read it 3 times before I believed it. "You going to do it?" Red asked, pouring coffee. "I don't know," I said. "Seems like a big thing." "You already did the big thing," he said. "This is just writing it down." That afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table and put pen to paper. I didn't start with the abuse. I started with the night I left, barefoot, bruised, but not broken. I wrote about the cup, the porch, the cold, and the open door. It took me 3 days to finish. When I did, Rhett wrote it to town himself, sealed in a leather pouch. I thought maybe that would be the end of the story, but stories don't end. They echo. 2 weeks later, a wagon came up the road. Inside was a girl, couldn't have been older than 11. Dull eyes, torn dress. She wouldn't get out at first, just sat clutching a rag doll and watching the house like it might strike her. Her uncle, a mill worker, said he read the piece in the Sentinel. Said she'd lost both parents, been staying with distant kin who treated her less than kind. When he asked where she wanted to go, she pointed to me. The porch boards creaked as I stepped outside. She didn't speak, just looked up at me the way I once looked at Rhett. "I don't have much," I said, "but I've got a bed and bread and a fire that never goes out." She didn't smile, but she nodded. I took her hand, and in that small, dirt-smudged palm, I felt the circle close, not like an ending, but like planting a seed. That night, I lit a second lantern on the porch, not for safety, not for show, but because I wanted every wandering girl to know there is a place where the door stays open, where bruises turn to stories, and where the broken learn they were never worthless to begin with.